Hello everybody, Scotia here and welcome to a video that I'm very excited to make because we finally got an update on the new Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi game, or as its title is now officially known as, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. So a new Budokai Tenkaichi game was announced back in I think March of this year, and it was very exciting. I did a video on it. If you haven't seen it, it's basically just geeking out and talking about my childhood playing the BT games, including and especially Budokai Tenkaichi 3. But that was kind of it for a while. Like, there was no real updates. The game kind of just like info about the game just kind of died. There was really like nothing to really go on like outside of that initial trailer. So it was exciting, but then it kind of just died off. So obviously it was still in the minds of some people, but I think most people, myself included, kind of just forgot about it. Until today, that is, as at the time of this recording, the Game Awards was last night, and we surprisingly got a new trailer for the new Budokai Tenkaichi game, or as I said earlier, its new name is now Sparking Zero. So for those that don't know, the Budokai Tenkaichi games in Japan were called the Sparking games. I can't remember the names entirely, but I remember one was called Neo, like Sparking Neo, and something like that. I can't remember the other names unfortunately at the moment, but the Budokai Tenkaichi name was a thing that was solely just in the West, and I believe was done to kind of help piggyback off the success of the Budokai games, which were completely different, made by completely different people, completely different type of game. But depending on who you ask, the Budokai games were better, more popular. Some people consider the Tenkaichi games better and more popular. I'm the latter, definitely. I said in the other video, I loved the Tenkaichi games. I enjoyed the Budokai games, but the Tenkaichi games was something else. But yeah, we finally got a new trailer and a new info on it, and it's not a long trailer and it goes by very, very quickly. Like, the pacing of this trailer was very like breakneck speed. Like, you really need to go through it frame by frame to see like some of the finer details here. But honestly, this game just looks incredible. I watched a 4K version of the trailer. I'll try and link it in the comments or the description, because honestly, this trailer you need to watch this trailer in 4K if you haven't already. It is gorgeous. Like, the things going on, the lighting, the character models, everything. Like, this game just is so crisp and it just looks incredible. I can't slash won't talk about the gameplay much because we don't really get a ton of it, but from the bits that they show at the start of the trailer, it very much looks like traditional Budokai Tenkaichi type gameplay, the more arena fighter based, where the camera is behind the character above them as you fly around the maps. You also have a lot of the iconic stuff that was in those games, like deflecting ki blasts and the arena destructing, especially. They even show it in the trailer when Frieza does, his big death ball attack on the Namek map. The arena gets destroyed and now you're on, destroyed Namek. That was a thing that was in, again, most of my knowledge and memories of the third Tenkaichi game. I did play the first two, but I don't remember, like, the differences and the finer details between those three games is very fuzzy to me. But I think that was a thing that was in all three of the BT games, was, doing a big move and destroying the arena. Like, you could do it, not on every stage, but on most stages, you could do that. So that's really, really cool that that's coming back. There's a little bit of a hint of it in the trailer, but one of the press releases, which I'll get to later, flat out confirm it, but beam clashes are indeed back, which is a huge thing. Beam clashes are always really fun. They destroy controllers, and I have no doubt these are going to destroy, the DualSense controllers for the PS5. I mean, I've already gone through so many controllers without doing beam clashes, but beam clashes I'm going to have to buy like 10 in advance, because beam clashes are going to destroy those controllers. But it's still really good to see that back. And yeah, like, just in terms of the core gameplay, again, didn't see a lot of it, but what's there is good, it's familiar, it looks like it's going to be, it's more Budokai Tenkaichi, which is perfect. I mean, that's what a lot of us want, it's what I want. Yeah, it's been, 17 years since the previous game, so, more of the same in this case is completely fine with me. The most interesting part of this trailer, though, is the characters that are revealed in it, and for the most part, they're fairly basic. Like, it's very, kind of like, oh yeah, like, there was no way this character and this character wasn't going to be in the game. But there's one that I'll save for the end that is very shocking and very surprising, but I'll get to that. So right off the bat, we get confirmation of Vegeta, which is, again, obvious. There was literally no way this game was not going to have Vegeta in some form. The early parts of the trailer are him and Goku. They start off in their base forms, base Goku, base Vegeta. But then eventually they, transform into their Super Saiyan Blue or Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan, whatever it's called. I haven't watched Super. There's some parts of it that is... I'm aware of most of it, but I don't know the finer details. Or at least I'm not, 100% sure on the finer details. But they both basically become Super Saiyan Blue. So that is confirmed as a transformation. You will at least be able to transform into Super Saiyan Blue, which is, again, really, really cool. From there, we then see Frieza on Namek. And like I said earlier, kind of basic stuff, like he does a death ball, kind of, basic stuff. Of course Frieza was going to be in the game. Just like Vegeta, there was no way he wasn't going to be. We then, interestingly enough, we get like the first of like oh cool, this character's confirmed, and it is Dragon Ball Super Broly. And again, obviously, kind of like if they were going to do a Broly, I'm fairly confident they'll at least do both Brolys. Maybe the movie Dragon Ball Z movie Broly, that might be DLC at some point if he's not in the base game. I think both will be in the base game. But yeah, Dragon Ball Super Broly, obvious choice, really really cool choice. I really like that Broly. I like that design. He looks really, really cool. You see a bit of his moves. There's one where he has like a really cool moment where he he's got Goku by the leg and he's like slams him on the ground. That looked really cool. And like the animations and just the lighting, like when the kind of the red lighting on his eyes as he goes and does it, really, really cool. Like the game is just so visually gorgeous. Then the trailer ends with a literal blink in you'll miss it montage at the end as it goes through a bunch of characters and confirms them, which is funny because it's like you literally there's some of these where like you have to be so quick on the pause button to actually see these characters because this part of the trailer goes by so quickly. But I will go through them now. So in order, you get Piccolo, Krillin, Tien, Yamcha, Future Trunks, Android 18, Cell, Hercule, Majin Buu, Future Trunks but the Super version, Bergamo, Android 17 but the Super version, and Jiren. Now for the most part these are pretty standard characters. Like Trunks is obviously a very popular character, naturally he was going to be in the game. Cell, arguably one of the most popular villains in the series. It's probably between him and Frieza. I'd personally go with Cell. But that's just me. Android 18 is probably, I don't even think it's a probable, Android 18 is the most popular female character in the entirety of Dragon Ball, so no surprise there. It's really cool, I think, that we got Hercule, confirmed this early. Really cool for him. It's a shame, I actually really think Hercule would have been so fun in Dragon Ball FighterZ. It's a real shame they didn't include him. I think Hercule is such a fun character, especially if they keep it, which they should. In the original games, in the original BT games, obviously Hercule can't fly, so when you fly around as him, he uses a jetpack, but if you stop flying around, he starts slowly falling, kind of towards the ground, he's kind of flapping in the air. Hercule is such a funny character, really, really cool that they've, confirmed him out the gate, so that's really, really cool. Jiren, obvious, he was kind of last major villain of the Super anime. Obviously the manga kept going. I don't think we'll get anything from the manga. Maybe we might get, I think his name's Moro, we might get him, maybe his DLC, but yeah, so Jiren was an obvious one. Majin Buu, again, one of the main iconic villains turned, good guys in the series, so he was, obvious. I really hope he gets Super Buu, actually. I think, obviously, him and Kid Buu are pretty likely. I would be very surprised if neither of them make it into the game. But Super Buu, I feel like when it comes to the Dragon Ball games with the tighter rosters, Super Buu I feel like is the one that kind of always gets cut out of the three. He wasn't in FighterZ, which I think is a real shame. I felt like he was sorely missing from that game, to be honest. But yeah, so like I said, I'm sure they'll be in the game, all three of them. But just in particular, I really hope we do get Super Buu. The rest of the Z Warriors are, fairly obvious. I don't need to go into them. Piccolo, Krillin, Tien, Yamcha, again, obvious choices. They weren't going to miss the game. Very surprising that no Gohan at all in this trailer. Not even a teen Gohan or a kid Gohan. Completely missing from this trailer. Not one of the initial characters revealed. Very surprised by that. Gohan, depending on who you ask, is probably the second main character in the whole series. I think these days, probably Vegeta is probably just above him, but even then, the top three character in the series in terms of just overall importance, completely not here. Obviously I assume they're saving him, But just, yeah, just weird, like, just a weird thing that, like, Gohan didn't make this initial kind of like, oh, here's the cool characters you can look forward to. But, you know, there's something to look forward to, I guess, to see how Gohan is going to turn out and which versions of Gohan we get. No doubt we'll probably get, like, Great Saiyaman, maybe even get Gohan Beast. That would be really cool. Then we have Android 17, and to be honest, for me personally, it's a bit of a weird one because I know his stock went up a lot. Like, he was a pretty important character, especially towards the end of Super, which is no doubt why, you know, this version of him is the Super version. I assume it'll just be his default, like, he'll get his, like, Z design as, like, an old costume. I don't think they're going to do, like, two different versions of 17 like that they've done with Trunks, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, 17's cool, glad he's here. But for me, it's, like, this early, like, one of the core characters. For me, like I said, as someone who hasn't really, you know, who hasn't seen Super, I would not have personally put him in that, like, core cast. Like, I would not have put him with, like, Android 18 and Cell and, you know, Trunks and all that. I felt like he's kind of like, even just like a tier below them in terms of, like, overall kind of, like, popularity and, like, icon status and all that. But like I said, I know his stock and his status went up a lot during Super, so that makes sense. I can't remember if I mentioned Cell or not, but Cell, again, obvious choice. Hopefully we get his previous versions, which I'm sure we will. Like, yeah, there's no way we weren't going to get Cell. Then we get the Future Trunks, and this is kind of one of the ones that I probably have the most to say about, outside of the other one, who's the one left that I haven't talked about yet. But one thing I will say is the Future Trunks in the Saiyan armor, so like the Trunks from Z, that shot of him in this trailer, I love how he looks. He looks so fucking good in this trailer, like in this shot here. One thing I noticed that I absolutely loved, and I noticed it in, like, when I went through the trailer frame by frame, hair actually moves in this game, which is, like, crazy because I'm so used to, like, even, like, Raging Blast on the PS3, like, from what I remember, like, the Saiyan hair didn't move. I may be wrong on that, but I absolutely, in the Budokai Tenkaichi games, like, Trunks' hair in the Saiyan armor, like, didn't move. Like, it was rigid, it was stiff, like, it was like titanium steel, like, it didn't move. But in this shot, which I'm going to be, like, I'll be looping to kind of show you here, like, the way his hair moves, like, it flops, like, it looks so good, and, like, the shot, and the angle, and, like, I love Trunks. Trunks is one of my favourite Dragon Ball characters. To be honest, he's probably my favourite. It's either him or Gohan. Personally, I think Gohan's kind of, like, went down a bit as the years have gone on, and, like, how he's portrayed in Super from what I've seen. So I think these days I'd probably say Trunks is my favourite, because he's always been a very consistently fucking cool character. But yeah, like, I love Saiyan armor Trunks' design and the long hair, so good. But yeah, he looks amazing in this shot. And then we get the other Future Trunks, but this is the Super version. And again, makes sense. This game in general, I feel, is going to very much pull a lot from Super. Like, a lot of the default designs are going to be from Super. We've already seen it with Tien. Like, Tien has his Super design. Android 17 has his Super design. Broly as well. So, you know, I'm not surprised that they've gone with Trunks with the sword. They've gone with that design for him. What I think, though, is I think this is very much going to be like, because in the original games, in the BT games, you would have Future Trunks with the Saiyan armor, and, you know, he would have, you know, the Super Saiyan version, then, like, the super roided out, like, the big muscly version of Future Trunks, and, like, that was a separate character with, you know, his own moves and stuff like that. But then you would have Future Trunks with the sword from when he first debuted in Z, when he kills Frieza and King Cold, and, you know, those were two separate characters with their own moves. Like, Future Trunks obviously used the sword, like that version of him with the sword. What I think has happened here, though, is I think the default for Trunks with the sword is going to be the Super design, and I think he'll get his Z designs as, like, alternate costumes. I really don't think they're going to do, like, Super Trunks with the sword as one character, and then Z Trunks with the sword with that design with the jacket as his own character. To me, that's just kind of pointless. I know, like, a lot of the bulk of the Budokai Tenkaichi rosters is, like, the same character but in multiple versions, but I think, like, 3 versions of Trunks is a bit much, especially when, like, 2 of them for the most part are going to play fairly similar. I know in Super that version of Trunks with the sword, he uses the sword a bit more and he has more, I may be wrong, but, like, I think that version of Trunks goes Super Saiyan 2 in Super, which is really cool. I think that's a really cool thing that they always, because, you know, because Trunks was always just Super Saiyan. But I think you can have Super Saiyan 2 Trunks in, like, the Z, you know, jacket and boots and all that. Like, I think that's fine. Like, that's not, like, that doesn't break the canon or whatever. I don't think that's a big deal. So yeah, personally, I think that's how they're going to do that. I think you're going to have Future Trunks with the Saiyan armor, and that's the Z version, and then you're going to have Super Trunks with the sword, and that's the sword slot, and you're going to have the different sword, the different designs that that Trunks had when he had the sword is going to be, all in that slot. So that's basically what I think, how that's going to work. So now we get to the last character, and this one goes by so quickly. I genuinely I didn't even know he was in the trailer until I went back on the YouTube video and played it at 0.25 speed. But very briefly, for a couple frames in this trailer, you see Bergamo, and as I said earlier, not a super fan at all. I'd never really watched it, never really cared to watch it. I've seen this character before, but didn't really know anything about them. But when I saw this character, because they're very distinct, they're literally a werewolf character. I was like, oh, that's a character from Super. That's interesting that they're kind of thrown in here with a lot of these other iconic characters. But what's funny is I didn't know their names, so I literally had to Google Dragon Ball Super Wolf guy to find out his name. And I was like, oh, it's Bergamo. And I looked at his profile, and from what I can see and what I've heard other people say in response to the trailer is Bergamo is not a major character in Dragon Ball Super. He's a B, maybe even C tier character in Super. He has a couple fights, he doesn't really win any of them from what I can tell. This is a character that is, I would say, fairly obscure. Obviously he has a presence in Super in certain arcs from what I can see, but there are a lot of other characters from those same arcs in Super that are way more important. That I think Jiren, Jiren is a good example. Jiren is kind of the main antagonist, I believe, of the whole Tournament of Power stuff. He's the final fight again, I think, of Super at the end of the anime. So Jiren makes sense. Jiren was oh yeah, this is a major character from Super. Bergamo was not. He is not a major character from Super. He's a fairly kind of side character-ish. So it's very odd when you think about why is Bergamo in this trailer with iconic Dragon Ball Z and Super characters? He's here with Frieza, with Cell, with Future Trunks, with 18, with Jiren, with Broly, really popular characters that oh yeah, this character of course is in the game. This is one of the characters you first reveal. Don't worry, this character is in the game. That you don't have to worry about that. But then you throw in Bergamo. And I think what this is basically saying is, I think this is, Bandai Namco or Spike Chunsoft or whoever, designed this trailer. I think this is them essentially going don't worry, you're going to have your obscure characters in the game. Because that's one of the best things about the Budokai Tenkaichi games, is that you get some absolute nobodies who would never appear in a game that's not like this. You would never get Bergamo in Fighters, or Fighters 2 or whatever. This is that's a character that you will never see in a traditional 1v1, 2v2, 3v3 guy fighting game. You will never see Bergamo in that game. You will only see a character like Bergamo in a game like this, because the type of game that the Budokai Tenkaichi games are is that they allow a lot of characters that wouldn't get a shot otherwise. Even in like I said, the BT games, Dr. Wheelo and the Devil from Dragon Ball and General Blue and so many others I'm forgetting, Grandpa Gohan and so many characters that just you would never get a shot. You would never see any of them in a traditional fighting game or a 1v1 or 2v2 or whatever. I said earlier, this is the only type of game that you would get these characters in, and that's why I think these games were so beloved, because they had insane rosters that you just wouldn't see anywhere else. And there was always the concern, even when this game was announced back in March, it was oh, you're going to have your typical characters, you're going to have your Trunkses, your Gokus, your Vegetas, etc., Gohans. But, a lot of the kind of weirder picks, they're probably either going to be DLC or whatever, they're not going to make it, because, it's a new game, they'll have to start from scratch. But I really think Bergamo being in this trailer is Bandai Namco, Spike Chunsoft, whoever, basically just going don't worry, we know why you like these games. We know you like it because you get to play as characters you would never get the chance to play as otherwise. And I think that's awesome, and I think that's such a great idea to do that, to just kind of go hey, here's a little nod, we know why you like these games, here's the proof that we're going to be going to some obscure lengths. Because a character like Bergamo being in this game like essentially confirms like a ton of characters from Super. Like there's no way Bergamo is in this game and like Goku Black isn't, Zamasu isn't, Kale isn't, Khalifa isn't, Kaba isn't, Frost isn't, Hit isn't, like so many other characters from Super. If Bergamo's in this fucking game, then so are they. Like that's basically what they're saying here. I don't know, I just think that's a really cool thing that like, I don't know how many other like game companies would go to that little length to go like, you know what, we know this community, we know why you love these games, so here's your nod that like we're going to be living up to those expectations. And I think that's just really cool. So to wrap up this video, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and again it's, keeping the discussion about the roster going. And there's a line in one of the versions of the press release, because there's been a couple of different types of press releases and, descriptions about the game dotted on like Steam and the Bandai Namco website, etc. And the wording of some things is very interesting, but the version that I've seen the most, like the most common version of, the press release that I've seen, one version of it is on the Steam store in the description, so I'll just read it out. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero takes the legendary gameplay of the Budokai Tenkaichi series and raises it to whole new levels. Learn and master an incredible roster of playable characters, each with signature abilities, transformations, and techniques. Unleash the fighting spirit within you and take the fight to arenas that crumble and react to your power as the battle rages on. So I think the main standout thing from this, version of the press release is the line where it says, learn and master an incredible roster of playable characters. And now, it doesn't really give you a specific idea of what type of roster this is going to be in terms of size and variety and stuff. It doesn't give you an idea of oh, we're just doing Z and Super, or we're doing, we're going to have GT in here as well, or we're going to have, original Dragon Ball. It doesn't really go into that, which is fair, it's very early days. I'm sure we'll find out that information sometime soon. But it at least gives you an idea of this roster is going to be, something of worth. It's going to be something impressive that is going to, kind of surprise people maybe. But then you get this version of the press release where the wording of that sentence is changed a bit, but that single change makes it way more interesting. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero takes the legendary gameplay of the Budokai Tenkaichi series and raises it to whole new levels. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero has a historic number of playable characters, each with signature abilities, transformations, and techniques. Unleash the fighting spirit within you and take the fight to arenas that crumble and react to your power as the battle rages on. So immediately what jumps out here is the line where they're talking about the roster, is this version of the press release says that Sparking Zero has a historic number of playable characters. Now when you say historic, that means that, it is more than you've ever seen before. And when you think about the previous Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi games, I think Budokai Tenkaichi 3 has something like 161 playable characters. That is, of course, including, individual characters and all the transformations. So for Goku, Goku Base is one character, Goku Super Saiyan 1 is one character, Super Saiyan 2 is, etc, etc. All those Super Saiyan versions are technically counted as, one character, but they're all under the banner of Goku. For them to say that this game has a historic amount of playable characters is insane, because that implies that this game is going to have more, is at the very least going to have more than 161 playable characters. And if that's the case, with how good this game looks, this is going to be the fucking best game of all time. That is an insane claim. Of course, there is the caveat that this line here, the version that says a historic number, isn't in any other version of the press release. It's not on other Bandai Namco sites, it's not in the descriptions on the PlayStation Store or the Steam Store, so you kind of have to take this with a pinch of salt. But if that claim is true and they're not bullshitting us, this game is going to just be insane. My mind can't process having more characters than Budokai Tenkaichi 3, but also looking as good as this game does. That's just insane. There's no way that that's possible. But honestly, I kind of believe it, because the thing with the Budokai Tenkaichi games is this isn't a deep layered fighter Dragon Ball FighterZ. You can't really asset reuse in Dragon Ball FighterZ because it's kind of an insult to the game and the players in the terms of just reusing shit to just make a new character. It's it's lame. You want a bit more effort in there. You can't just take oh hey, here's Vegeta and take what Vegeta does and make an entirely new character, but he's just leftovers of, you know, stuff that Vegeta has. But in Budokai Tenkaichi, that's like the preferred thing. I want them to reuse assets. Like, if you need to make 20 Gokus, make 20 Gokus. Like, reuse that shit, man. Like, I want more than 161 playable characters. Of course, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't get to that point, but like, I mean, go for it. Like, if by reusing assets you can get that roster to that level, by all means go for it. This isn't a deep fighting game. This isn't a layered fighting game. This is, like I said in the previous video I did on Budokai Tenkaichi, like, this is the Dragon Ball equivalent of just smashing toys together, and that's all it needs to be. If you need to like recreate toys to help make those battles more, you know, interesting, then by all means go for it. I'm going to wrap things up here though. I think I ended up talking about this game for way too long, but it's very exciting. It just looks so good. I can't wait to see more. I can't wait to see who else gets revealed for the game. I can't wait to see how they end up looking. Even though I said earlier, like, obviously I'm someone who hasn't seen Super, so a lot of that stuff was lost on me. I'm still very excited to see Super characters and see how they translate to the game. And, you know, I'm just excited to see more, man. I think this is such a dream game. I mean, I've been talking to my brother about it all day today, and it's just like, you know, this is just our childhoods, you know, back. Like, my brother's been saying, it's like he's 12 again, you know, because that was the age where me and him were going off to play, you know, Budokai Tenkaichi 3, and just seeing all those characters and just smashing them together and just, you know, doing all sorts of cool shit and beam clashes and all these, like, power-ups and Super Saiyan transformations and fusions. Man, like, there's nothing like it. Like, these games were just peak childhood, you know, and it's so cool to see it back, and honestly just looking just so gorgeous and just so like I was talking about with Trunks, like, just even like that little thing, like his hair flopping around in his animation. Like, man, never would have imagined something like that happening back in like 2007 when Tenkaichi 3 came out. And now, you know, we're here, and it's just good, man. Like, I just can't wait to see more. I can't wait to get my hands on it. It's going to be so fun. But yeah, I'll leave things here. I didn't expect to go on for so long once again, but that's just me at this point. But thank you all for watching if you got to this point. Yeah, we'll definitely cover this game more in the future as we find out more. So until then, I shall see you later. Thank you and goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.